So we're going to take a huge left turn and talk about industry workforce and where that's going and what trends we're seeing. But before we dive into specific topics, I mean, what are your overall thoughts about workforce in the industry? How's staffing for you? What are you hearing from your folks, Elliott?
You know, it's interesting because the people that are doing really good on their workforce have evolved. And I hate to say it, but they're using all of social media. They're using different networking things. They're using executive recruiters. They're going about it on a more let's evolve level, where when I'm seeing companies that really complain about I am having a terrible time finding people, they're going out and the way they're finding their people is, hey, I put an ad on Monster. I put an ad up on Indeed, but I haven't looked at it in 3 months and I got 4 resumes. I'm taking all the free, I put something up on Craigslist. Not that those things aren't bad, but they're using one avenue and they're not realizing that they can tap into 100 different avenues. Like all of us, I mean, we're not just on Facebook. We're not just on LinkedIn. We're not just on Twitter. We're on all of those platforms. And if you're going to tap into a bigger market, throw a bigger net for more people, I'm finding the companies that use a huge swatch, they paint a big picture, they're tapping into people that you normally wouldn't think of going after. You know, I had a wonderful conversation yesterday about, recruiting and finding great people. And one of my things is I said, everyone says, and they look for a resume and they say, I want to find a resume that specifically says rental yard. Put whatever title you want behind it. Sales in a rental yard, management in a rental yard, cleaning equipment in a rental yard. I want that on there. But here's the biggest thing is that if you I look for complementary skill sets. So watch this, the hospitality industry, which is huge. We stayed at hotels last night. We ate at restaurants yesterday. The hospitality industry trains amazing people to be hyperly aware of their customers. That's what we do. They train them to not be afraid to get their hands dirty. That's what we do. They train people that sometimes the days are really long. Guess what? The rental yards sometimes open at 6 o'clock in the morning. Then we have a midday lull. And you don't realize it, but from like 10 to noon or even from like 11 to 1, the phones slow down a little bit because the trucks are already dispatched. Most of the people that are grabbing stuff for their projects, even if you're just a mom and pop shop, they got them in the morning. And then guess when we get busy again? In the afternoon. Look at a restaurant or look at a hotel. Everybody leaves in the morning and has breakfast, super busy in the morning. Restaurants, they serve lunch, all lunch is super busy. And then they have that midday lull and then they get busy for their dinner. And you have to have people that understand there's ebbs and flows of business and they have the work ethic and tenacity to happen. I don't need to teach somebody, I don't need them to know the industry. Right now, either one of you could teach somebody anything they want to know about the rental industry. What you can't teach them is work ethic. And I think the problem that we have as an industry, you mentioned it, Josh, and you put it out perfectly. We're growing exponentially. The problem is as we keep stretching, we're running out of a talent pool. But what we're not looking at is people that are burned out serving grumpy people food, and they don't realize that the guy who gets an excavator, he's super mellow, he's super cool, and he digs what we do. Another dad joke.
It's funny that you mentioned restaurants too, because I've always said that restaurants and rental businesses are incredibly similar. If you think about even how they're staffed, right?
Yeah.
Up front, you've got your polished, salesy, customer service people, and who do they argue with? The people in the back. And we always say the front and the back of the rental store too. And in the back, what do you have? You have the dishwashers, the equipment washers. You've got your mechanics are chefs, and they're not people sometimes. Yeah. They're a little bit unique. They do great work. They build great product. They repair great things, but they're a little bit unique. And there's always the front of the house versus the back of the house, the clean versus the dirty. It is such an interesting comparable industry. And I think you can get great management and great customer service people out of that. What you can't get, though, is technicians and CDL drivers. And that's one of my other fears is how are we going to bring enough blue-collar technicians and CDL drivers into the industry? Because everybody needs them. It's not just the rental industry. It's the construction industry. It's the manufacturing industry. There's a huge shortage of those people. And as a rental company, you can hire Elliott and have him come teach your sales force to sell everything, but if you've got nobody to pick it up and nobody to deliver it, you're kind of screwed.
That's right.
I mean, the CDL drivers are a much easier problem to solve, just because it's something that you can train within the company. Okay. You can hire somebody on a non-CDL truck, get them on there, get them the loading equipment. It's an easier pathway. You just find somebody, like Elliott said, find somebody with the work ethic, and you bring them in, and you could really quickly move them along to CDL. The technician's a much harder one, because that's years and years of knowledge and experience. And the problem is, if you need an A mechanic, it's gonna take a long time to get somebody from, a parts changer all the way up to an A mechanic. Where a driver, you can get them there quicker. Part of the problems with mechanics is that what a good mechanic can also do cabling in a building. He could do Cisco systems or run networks and stuff. So I feel a lot of these, a lot of kids today, you look at the two industries. I could be inside in air conditioning. Maybe I'm crawling through crawl spaces, or I'm in a network room, but it's such a cleaner industry than what we do in the rental world. I think it really takes a person that, it takes a very unique person that says, this is what I want to do. I want to get dirty every day. I want my hands to be greasy. I want to clean with, not seashells, pistachio shells at the end of the day. I do also believe that every year we have less and less kids that grow up working on their parents' cars with their parents or whatever. And I know my dad's generation, all my dad's uncles would brag. Every single one of them has a story of pulling the engine in a 442 or some Buick or something, in the 50s or 60s. It was like a rite of passage, and everybody did it. And they pulled their engine, they rebuilt it, they did it better. You find me a kid today that's done an oil change, change his own brakes, whatever it is. So I think that you're losing that in America. You're losing that kid that would have grown up in this, not our industry, but touching stuff and physically maintaining it. So our talent pool is drastically decreasing. We do also feel a lot of the technical schools do not talk to our industry. Even when they teach it, it's a lot of times we find it's taught in groups. Or if they're doing engine work, there's 5 people on an engine because they don't have enough space and money to, okay, we're giving you this engine, it's broken, you go fix that one, you go fix that one. And then when they come into the real world, it is, you're on this by yourself. Like, you need to know what you're doing. So that's it. So that's where we're struggling. And
to tag along with that, a lot of the folks who come out of trade schools with high quality degrees, they're kind of like engineers or specialists. I don't necessarily need a diesel mechanic who can rebuild every kind of diesel engine. I need somebody who knows the basics of diesel, the basics of gas, the basics of hydraulics, the basics of electrical. Because if it truly needs a major repair, or if it was damaged by a customer, or if it's being claimed under insurance, I'm going to send it to a dealer, or I'm going to do something different, maybe even sell that piece of equipment. I'm not spending a whole lot of my time doing major repairs. I'm doing minor repairs. And I do think, and this is something that we've been pushing really hard with workforce and out in technical schools, there is a group of students who are a perfect fit for the rental industry that get into technicians and auto mechanics that don't work well other places. And what I'm saying is,
who are they?
Is they like the idea of fixing things. They like the idea of getting their hands dirty. But when you go work at an auto shop, you're a parts changer. You're changing tires every day. And some mechanics love that, and that's great for those mechanics. But there are some of those mechanics who like to smell the exhaust, feel the vibration, taste the engine oil. They want to do something different. They don't want to do the exact same thing every day. And guess what? That's what we've got in the rental industry. And when we talk to the teachers and the counselors at these places, they're like, oh yeah, it's like this person and this person who would get really bored in a little while working at a standard automotive shop. So I think there's a core group of people who don't know that we exist that we can win over and be great for. Same thing with factory workers. Some people love factory work. My uncle is one of those people, loved, showing up, doing the exact same thing every day, perfecting it and doing it well. But not everybody wants to do that. Some people want a different day every day, and that's what rental has. So I think we have those opportunities.
You missed one important skill, though.
Yes.
They need to be extremely computer literate now.
Yeah, that's fair, because you can't change a spark plug without a computer, right?
Yep, and I do. I've always said, I wish our manufacturers would come out with something called the 80s version of rental equipment.
Yeah.
80s version.
Super simple.
Duct tape and wire, could fix almost anything on a job site. Everything was direct drive. There were no ECUs. That we've overcomplicated our lives in the rental industry. And, It's just amazing how many failures we have every day. And you go out there, and some we could have prevented, in all fairness, but there's others you look at and you say, there's nothing I could have done to have prevented that faulty sensor, where there's 30 of them. There's nothing I could have done to prevent that sensor from going bad that day. And it gets frustrating.
Elliott, mechanics and drivers.
For me, and it's funny because you got me thinking on something. I'm a big one for cause and effect. And you mentioned, the rental industry is taking off. It's growing, and it's relatively new. And what I mean by that is that if we rewind just to the early 1980s, people don't think about it, but in the 1980s, just 40 years ago, the rental industry, even the heavy equipment industry, wasn't what it was now. And people are realizing as they want their job sites running faster, safer, and more efficient, we need this. So I hate to say it, but for how fast we've grown, we've created the problem that we have with service techs. And I think we as an industry need to be the ones that solve it. Like if we sat there and somebody said, hey, look, let's go down to a trade school, and you mentioned the trade school and you say, hey, they're not catering to us. Why aren't we catering to them? Like I would love to see some of the major equipment manufacturers go to major trade schools or even create a trade school and say, look, we're going to drop off the scissor lift, the 40-foot boom, the mini excavator, the jumping jack tamper. We're going to drop off the skid steer, and we're going to teach not just diesel engines, but hydraulics and batteries and electrical systems and all that stuff. If somebody created that school, and I always think about that, and people are like, oh, well, you couldn't do that. I hate to say it, but IBM, and I follow people that create great things. IBM made a sales school only to sell IBM copiers. And it was such a good school selling IBM copiers that other industries wanted to go because of the overall trades that were taught. And I think that if one of the major manufacturers said, look, we're going to create a school, just like here in Florida, there's a school called Full Sail that does nothing but train audio technicians. It's the best in the world. And I would love to see that somebody said, hey, let's make a technical school. And that's all they do is train people on rental equipment, knowing that our industry is taking off. Those people could demand so much more money. And here's the biggest thing. The manufacturer that creates that school, they're going to have control because guess what those technicians are going to want to work on? That brand. And all of a sudden you start gaining it is that when somebody works for you and they say, look, I only want this blue brand because I'm familiar with it. When you got to go buy fleet and you're like, that piece is yellow. I guess I'm buying blue today because I know this guy can fix it. And they can actually affect the market. I mean, just kind of going off on a complete different tangent because I realize we've created the problem.
Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, some of the manufacturers are doing a lot of that. CAT actually announced last week that they put $500,000 in a dealer certification program. There's a lot of good dealer manufacturer focused programs out there. The problem is the dealers and manufacturers want those people.
Oh yeah.
So they're not pushing those people to then go into rental. And we're losing out on some of those people. Now, I do also have to say, we've talked a lot about the national rental companies. The national rental companies have been incredibly supportive of industry workforce campaigns to try and get more people into the industry.
Absolutely.
They helped us fund a season of a television show you can watch on Apple TV and Tubi called Jobs of Tomorrow. It's season 3. It's one of those shows that like you end up watching on the Discovery Channel one day, and then you're like, 3 hours later, I didn't know how much I wanted to know about suspension bridges. But it's about the rental industry.
It's one of my favorite topics, by the way.
Yes.
No, it actually is.
It is? Okay,
I'm
that's great.
I'm fascinated by suspension bridges. So.
We've got a Born for This campaign that we're spending tons of money on that shows young people playing in a sandbox and then becoming drivers or mechanics later on. So they've really supported doing a lot of those things. We need more generalist education, and we're sending people out multiple times a month to trade schools in person with state and local leaders, with rental companies, to talk about programs in rental.
Thanks for doing that. Thank you.
Well,
you know what I mean? Because it makes a difference. Because I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like I ended up in rental accidentally.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome when, you say, people don't know about us and they're not reaching out to us, but we got to create it from our side. And I think it's wonderful. When I went down and I saw at the ARA show, the Jobs of Tomorrow and looking at the stuff of, I was born for this. I stood there in front of the Born for This, and I saw all the people you took around. You toured a huge group.
400 middle and high school students
Wow.
came to the ARA show to tour around. My favorite program, though, that we've done so far is I went to the Girl Scouts tri-annual reunion with like 8,000 Girl Scouts and their troop leaders and all that kind of stuff in Orlando, Florida last year. And we were there with companies like NASA and American Dairy Farmers trying to recruit and talk to these people. But it's a bunch of young women who aren't represented well enough in our industry, who love to work outside, who love to work with their hands.
That's right.
And I know it's the long game, but that's where associations can play. The long game of just kind of planting that seed so that they know there's this cool thing that you can do. It's part of the sharing economy. It's a more sustainable solution. We don't talk about those things a lot sometimes, but that's what they care about. And hopefully, maybe 10 years from now, we can get some of those people in here too.
Interesting.
Very cool.
All right. So we've talked about like 15 years from now, the wall of rental penetration and gone a number of places, workforce. For people who are listening in on this, what about the next 6 to 12 months? What would you be thinking about if you had to pick just two things to worry about for the next 6 to 12 months? What would you be thinking about?
Well, I thought we were going to go further than 6 to 12, but if it's, the future of the industry, if I can steal from what you had started to say, because I do think it's a huge part of what we're looking at right now, is the artificial intelligence being brought into our industry. And I think that AI can drastically help improve a lot of areas of our business. A lot. Especially when you get, we're talking about the mechanics and the lack of knowledge on some of them and helping them get up to speed. It's only going to be a matter of time before it is developed that a lot of diagnosis can be done through AI. Where a mechanic can put in, here's the issues I'm facing, here's the exact equipment, here's the exact serial number. I'm surprised like Smart Equip, they're not doing it, and if they're not, they need to be. But it is the next evolution. At the front counter, order quality alone, I can't tell you how many times we accidentally leave something off an order where, we have 9 things happening on an order and we forget the fork attachment. It wasn't translated, whatever reason. It's so dumb, but AI can help us. It can actually help us take the order, but it can actually help us do quality control on the order, where it could be providing summaries of what the order is supposed to be. So as it's getting put down the line, when you get to your dispatching and deliveries, it's a chess game that we're constantly trying to figure out. I've got this stuff that needs to be there at 8. This needs to be there between 9 and 10. I got these things to pick up, and you have somebody all day figuring out what needs to be done and how we're going to mix it. And AI can really, really assist with all of that in its infant. And AI is only in its infancy. That's number one. Number two is I'm going to say that our industry, I'm talking to the little guys when the big guys already have this figured out, but the little guys like the Durantes of this world, we need to focus on financing. And we need to find the right finance partners right now, because I am finding with the interest rates as high as they are, we are still finding good partners out there who are providing the right rates, the right terms, and they're not really taking advantage of where we're at right now. And I'm finding others that are doing the exact opposite. So I would say those are the two things that, one is more short-term, the AI is more long-term, but I would love to see our industry go that route.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you bring up AI because so many people feel like it's so far away. And one of my goals this year has been to use it for something every day. And I am constantly impressed with some of the things that I can do with it and how advanced it already is. I'm not using a version of AI that has been trained on equipment or equipment maintenance manuals or anything like that. But I tested it the other day. I put in my Bobcat T190 is overheating. What's wrong with it? And it had incredible suggestions. And then I picked one and I said, how do I know if it's this? And it then continued to tell me how to then check that. So can I use it for training mechanics? All this stuff. And the future of equipment rental in Vegas next year, it's the day before the ARA show, we're actually having an AI hands-on workshop where we have a speaker who's going to be coming in. You're going to pull out your device and we're going to go through how to write really great prompts, because there is a technique to it. It's kind of like Googling. If you go talk to your grandparents and they try and Google something, it's almost painful, right? It's going to be the same with AI. but we're going to take out our phones and learn how to use AI in the business today. And certainly it can make a rental rap that it sounds like Drake, and that's fun and funny. But there's a lot of other things from like customer data mining and other things that it can already do that is super interesting. What about you, Elliott?
To pan off, and I have my items, but to pan off the AI, I heard an interesting one the other day that, we're playing with the first, and people don't realize it, but if you rewind 1 year, ChatGPT came onto the market. It was the fastest downloaded artificial intelligence, new wave. Now everybody's got it. They even have that you can use AI to answer some of the stuff. And the crazy thing is, Josh, they literally says that the AI we're using now is at an elementary level. And I don't mean elementary like basic. I mean elementary like they say, that it's the equivalent of a child that's 13 years old or younger for intelligence. They say that the next generation that they're coming out with, because they're figuring out the algorithms, that the way that it can help decipher some of the questions you're asking is going to go to a graduate college student level in the next 2 years. So when you recommend tapping into it and utilizing it, if you're not getting used to that tool now, watch out, because somebody who is going to leave you behind.
Yeah.
So my big one that I'm going to push is I'm going to push two things. I'm going to say that probably in the next 6 months to 2 years, the biggest thing is right now I'm a big one, and we all know what IQ is. IQ is your intelligence. It's your ability to formulate and resolve problems and your ability to think. But there's a second one that they've come up with now. Well, actually there's 4, but one of the ones that I really look at is what's known as TQ. And TQ is technology. Your ability to use any and all technology out there to make your mundane tasks easier. I always do the analysis that if we sit there, I can imagine that there's somebody, and I remember my parents, my mom said we cook everything on the stove. We got a microwave, and guess what she said? She goes, why would anybody? Then she got used to using a microwave, and everybody's using a microwave. Now, the crazy thing is my wife's like, we brew our coffee in a coffee pot. Then it turned to the Keurig, and now nobody buys coffee. They walk into Starbucks, they use their little app, and they just walk out, and they don't even talk to people. And the biggest thing is it takes the mundane tasks. And I think every rental company, doesn't matter if you're the big 5 or if you're the single guy, I think you need to look at what things can we do in our business. And I don't care if it's software for monitoring our fleet, software for utilization, or when to monetize or sell fleet. I think you need to look at every piece of technology, even something as simple as going out, and we hook up computers now to our equipment to see what the fleet age is, what the health of the equipment is. But literally, could you get tablets? I thought it was crazy the other day. Our Amazon guy shows up and he's holding a tablet, and he's sitting there and he's taking pictures of the drop, where it is, and taking care of it. If literally, and it's relatively simple because you can get tablets now for $200-300 and go out and log all your equipment and manage it so that you don't have 4 scissor lifts and the one in the back hasn't been rented in 6 months for only one reason. They're grabbing the ones in the front. Mm-hmm. And I hate to say it, but if you get great technology, you can take away the mundane tasks that are consuming our time so that our businesses run faster, safer, and more efficient, and our industry keeps growing the way it should.
Yeah, and just to key off of that, from our research, the average rental company spends 1 to 3% of revenues on technology solutions. That may sound big or small to you, but when you compare it to other industries, most industries are north of 6% of revenues. We way underspend in technology. I hear some people complain that we don't have great technology in the industry. And one of the reasons that we don't have great technology in the industry is because we're not willing to pay for it.
There it is.
And we're not willing to invest in it.
Wow,
And
that was a
we don't have
truth
enough
bomb.
people to invest in it. I spent some time at a rental software company. I've talked to a lot of them. They could do more if you were willing to pay more. And I hate to say that because I know that it's expensive, but you've got to invest. You've got to be willing to invest in your technology. For me, when I think about the next 6 to 12 months, I think about going back to basics. We've spent the last couple years just running around like our heads are cut off, fat and happy, throwing off cash. And what were you doing in 2019? Who were your top customers then? which markets could you rule? Was it landscapers? When's the last time you loved on your landscapers? Because you probably had a lot of bigger contractors who came into and started renting from you over the last couple of years because of changes in fleet and availability and all that kind of stuff. Are you still loving on those landscapers?
Yeah.
If you ruled that market, if you're an independent rental company or a smaller rental company, who were your core customers before and the customers that you know you can win at? Go after those customers. What type of fleet can you win at? Go after that kind of fleet. Defleet. Be much more reserved. Miss rentals. Not a ton of rentals, but if you never miss a rental, you've got too much fleet. I remember I made that mistake myself. I remember sitting there, just kicking myself for missing a rental and buying too much fleet because of it. But you should occasionally run out, not often, and you want to get creative when it happens, and but you want to be getting creative a lot and missing rentals a little bit. And in relation to that, I see so many rental companies that don't track their missed rentals. You have got to track your missed rentals. You need to know what piece of equipment that you missed the rental on, how long that rental was for, and who that was from, and the dates that you would have missed that rental. And if you have that information, you can very easily say, oh, well, I missed a log splitter on the first cold weekend in fall. I missed 20 log splitters that day. I don't really need more log splitters because they were only going to rent that one day. Or I've missed 3 weekly rentals on a mini skid steer in the last 60 days. If that keeps up, I can pay for a mini skid steer. I need to buy another mini skid steer now. And it helps you really justify and quickly make data-driven decisions on where to grow your fleet, which fleet to grow. So as you're shrinking that fleet, if you're tracking your missed rentals and then loving on those customers where you can win and where you've won in the past, you'll do really well.
Can I add something to that real quick?
Yes, you can.
So I tell my guys I hate the term missed rentals, right?
Okay.
And I tell my guys, even though our system calls it missed rentals and everybody calls it missed rentals, I tell them it's missed opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I said, put in anything, even if we got the rental, record it. Not as a missed rental because we got the rental, but as a missed opportunity. So if someone comes in and they want to rent a 6,000 watt generator and we were able to convince them to take a 9,000 watt generator because we were out of sixes, put it in and say that. Say we got the rental. If we say to a guy, hey, look, we don't have that ride-on Bobcat you want, but we can get it back this afternoon. We can free deliver it this afternoon. The guy, yeah, I could do that. Even though I'm here to pick it up now, I could easily wait till later, put it in anyway as a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
We got the rental, but we didn't get it as the customer wanted it, which could have led, and if you see enough of them, so I need to get a ride-on skid steer.
And then you make better buying decisions because you know, well, I keep substituting this larger track loader when I could have bought this other track loader.
Exactly.
So but that to me is the calculus of missed rentals.
Yes.
I see so many people who aren't even tracking missed rentals or the basics of missed rentals. So if you're not doing the basics, please start there. Then go up to the Durante level of missed rentals. The other thing that I would be thinking about, and we're not going to have enough time to get into this today, but I think there might be a future conversation where we would want to get into this, is digitizing your business from the customer experience perspective. When we talk to contractors, these contractors who grew up with Airbnb, who get the idea of the sharing economy, who want to rent versus own equipment, they expect a digital experience. They want a digital experience. When we talk to them and we survey them, over 50% of them want to do things like order online. And it's actually the smaller smaller contractors who are needing this. The large contractors have professional buyers and ERPs to manage it. Small contractors who got used to the idea in 2020, they're laying in bed at night and they're like, man, I need a cutoff saw in the morning. I just go on my phone and reserve one. If you're a small rental company, you don't have a good digital web experience. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to have AI built in. It doesn't have to do some of the super fancy stuff. But if it doesn't look good, if they can't get the basics, if they can't reserve a piece of equipment, you're going to start to lose customers because those customers want, need, and expect that experience. And somebody else is going to take your business if you don't do it.
Great point.
Just to kind of wrap up, thank you, Josh. And I appreciate the ARA. I appreciate you. Thank you for setting this up. I hope we brought a value to everybody listening, and I would love to do it again.